Imagine it's 2015. A new graduate walks into their first software engineering job. They're nervous, excited, completely overwhelmed. They barely understand the code base. They don't understand the architecture. They don't understand the business. And nobody expects them to. Their first year is not really about productivity. It's about survival, learning where things are, understanding how professional software is built, reading code written by people far more experienced than they are. They make mistakes. Lots of mistakes. They break things, deploy bugs, ask embarrassing questions, misunderstand requirements, and somehow that's considered normal. In fact, companies expect it. Every senior engineer was once a confused junior engineer. Every expert started by being bad at their job. This isn't unique to software. Doctors, lawyers, architects, accountants, electricians, pilots, everyone starts at the bottom. Society has always worked because experienced people trained inexperienced people. Knowledge moved forward, generation after generation. Think about a surgeon. You wouldn't trust someone to perform surgery after reading a textbook. Experience matters. Think about an airline pilot. You wouldn't trust a pilot who had never flown before. Experience matters. Software worked the same way. The first few years were the apprenticeship. Junior developers fixed bugs, wrote tests, updated documentation, created small features. Not because those tasks were glamorous, because those tasks taught the craft. The latter mattered, because the latter created future experts. Companies accepted this trade-off. Today, the junior costs money. Tomorrow, the junior creates value. This system wasn't perfect, but it worked remarkably well. Every generation of developers trained the next generation. The industry expanded, knowledge accumulated, experience spread. For decades, the formula barely changed. Then something happened. Something that may fundamentally change how expertise is created. Artificial intelligence arrived. At first, AI looked harmless, a productivity tool. Nothing more. Generate a function, explain an error, write a test, summarize documentation. Useful, impressive, but not revolutionary. At least that's what many people thought. Then the models improved, rapidly. What took hours started taking minutes. What took minutes started taking seconds. And suddenly something strange appeared. AI wasn't just helping senior developers. It was helping with junior work, writing boilerplate, creating tests, fixing simple bugs, reading documentation. The exact tasks juniors traditionally performed. Think about the kinds of work new developers usually handle during their first few years. Writing simple functions, creating automated tests, fixing straightforward bugs, updating documentation, building internal tools. None of these tasks sound glamorous, but they serve an important purpose. They teach people how real systems work. A junior developer doesn't become valuable because of the tasks themselves. They become valuable because of what those tasks teach them. Every bug reveals how software behaves under pressure. Every failed deployment teaches caution. Every code review teaches better habits. The work may seem small, but the lessons are enormous. For decades, this apprenticeship happened naturally. Beginners performed simple work. Experienced people performed difficult work. And slowly, the beginner moved upward. The system wasn't perfect, but it reliably produced future experts. Artificial intelligence changes that equation. Not because it replaces every developer, but because it performs many beginner-level tasks surprisingly well. The very tasks companies once used to train people can now be completed in seconds by a machine. Imagine a manager looking at a backlog of simple tickets. A few years ago, those tasks might have been assigned to a junior developer. Today, they can be assigned to an AI-assisted senior developer. The work gets done faster, the cost is lower, the business becomes more efficient. And that's where the problem begins. Because from the company's perspective, the decision makes perfect sense. Businesses are designed to maximize efficiency. They are rewarded for reducing costs and increasing productivity. That's how markets work. But markets don't always think about the long term. A company can eliminate junior positions today and improve performance immediately. The consequences may not appear for years. And by then, the entire industry may be affected. This creates a strange paradox. The more successful AI becomes at replacing beginner work, the harder it may become to create future experts. The ladder becomes shorter. And eventually, some people start asking whether the ladder still exists at all. Imagine a world where almost every entry-level task is automated. New graduates leave university. They know the theory, they understand the concepts, but nobody wants to hire them because AI can already perform the work they would normally do. This isn't a problem for today's senior engineers. They're already established. They're already trusted. They're already productive. The real challenge appears 10 years later. When companies start looking for the next generation of experts, every senior developer was once a confused beginner. Every architect was once a junior engineer. Every technology leader spent years making mistakes and learning from them. Experience was not downloaded. It was earned. Experience grows slowly, one difficult project at a time, one production outage at a time, one mistake at a time. That's why expertise is so valuable. It represents years of accumulated lessons. Now imagine an entire generation struggling to accumulate those lessons. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack motivation, because the traditional path into the industry no longer exists. This is what some people call the missing generation problem. The fear is not that AI replaces today's experts. The fear is that it prevents tomorrow's experts from emerging. And nobody knows exactly how serious that risk is. What's fascinating is that this pattern may extend far beyond software. Graphic design is changing, marketing is changing, writing is changing, research is changing. Many professions are beginning to experience the same pressure. AI consistently attacks the bottom rung of the ladder first, the repetitive work, the repeating work, the beginner work, the tasks people once used to gain experience. And that's what makes this moment so historically unusual. The reason this matters is simple. Every profession depends on a steady flow of newcomers. Experienced people eventually retire. Industries evolve, technology changes. Knowledge must constantly be passed from one generation to the next. When the pipeline weakens, the entire system eventually feels the consequences. Imagine if hospitals suddenly stopped accepting medical residents. For a few years, nothing dramatic would happen. The current doctors would continue working. Patients would still receive treatment. Everything would appear normal. But eventually the shortage would arrive, and by then it would be too late to solve quickly. Software may be approaching a similar challenge, not because developers are disappearing, because the path that creates developers may be changing. The old apprenticeship model depended on beginners having access to real work. AI is increasingly performing that work itself. Of course, technology has disrupted jobs before. The Industrial Revolution eliminated entire professions. Computers automated countless tasks. The internet transformed industries. And yet humanity adapted every time. That's why many experts remain optimistic. History suggests that when technology destroys old jobs, it often creates new ones. Nobody planned for app developers. Nobody predicted social media managers. Nobody imagined prompt engineers. New tools create new opportunities. The problem is that those opportunities are rarely obvious in advance. And that's what makes periods of transition so uncomfortable. The old path is disappearing. The new path isn't fully visible yet. People find themselves standing between two worlds, one fading away, the other still under construction. For young people entering the workforce today, that uncertainty can feel overwhelming. They hear stories about layoffs. They hear stories about automation. They hear stories about AI replacing jobs. And naturally, they ask the same question: where do I fit into this future? Ironically, the answer may not be found in competing against AI. It may be found in learning how to work alongside it. Just as calculators didn't eliminate mathematicians, and spreadsheets didn't eliminate accountants. AI may change the nature of work far more than it eliminates work itself. The future junior developer may look very different from the junior developer of 2015. They may spend less time memorizing syntax, less time writing repetitive code, less time performing routine tasks, because machines increasingly handle those responsibilities. Instead, their value may come from something else: understanding problems, understanding users, understanding systems, understanding trade-offs, the skills that sit above the implementation itself. In other words, AI may push people higher up the stack, away from repetitive execution, toward judgment, toward decision-making, toward creativity, toward responsibility. That's an exciting possibility, but it comes with a challenge. How do you develop judgment without experience? How do you make good decisions if you've never seen the consequences of bad ones? How do you gain wisdom if the training ground disappears? This may become one of the defining questions of the AI era. Not whether machines become smarter, but how humans continue becoming smarter alongside them. Because intelligence is not only about answers, it's also about experience. And experience remains difficult to automate. You can generate code instantly. You can generate designs instantly. You can generate text instantly. But wisdom still takes time. Failure still takes time. Growth still takes time. That may be why adaptability becomes more important than expertise alone. The people who thrive may not be those who know the most today. They may be the people who can learn the fastest tomorrow. For decades, careers rewarded specialization. Learn one skill, master it, repeat it for 30 years. The modern world is becoming less predictable than that. Industries change faster. Technology changes faster. Business models change faster. Entire careers can transform within a decade. And AI is accelerating that pace even further, which means the most valuable skill may no longer be coding, or design, or marketing, or any single technical ability. The most valuable skill may be the ability to continuously reinvent yourself. That sounds simple, but historically it has been rare. Most people build an identity around what they do. Their profession becomes part of who they are. Changing direction can feel like losing part of yourself. The next generation may not have that luxury. They may need to reinvent themselves multiple times. Not because they failed, because the world keeps changing around them. And the people who adapt may become the ones who shape what comes next. This is where the story becomes bigger than software. Because the same pattern is starting to appear everywhere. Writers are asking it, designers are asking it, marketers are asking it, analysts are asking it, students are asking it. What happens when the traditional path into expertise begins to disappear? Perhaps the answer is that expertise itself changes. For most of history, knowledge was scarce. If you knew something valuable, you had an advantage. Today, knowledge is becoming abundant. AI can explain concepts, generate examples, answer questions, retrieve information instantly. The bottleneck is shifting elsewhere. Increasingly, the challenge isn't finding answers. The challenge is asking better questions. Knowing which problems matter, knowing which opportunities are worth pursuing, knowing when the machine is right, and knowing when it is wrong. That's a very different kind of skill, and it's much harder to automate. A machine can generate 1,000 solutions, but it still struggles to determine which solution is actually worth pursuing. That decision often requires human judgment. Think about the most successful people in history. Most weren't the fastest typists, or the best at memorization, or the most efficient workers. They were people who identified important problems before everyone else, and then spent years solving them. That may become the defining advantage of the future. Not execution, direction. Not doing things faster, choosing the right things to do. And that's why many people are looking at AI the wrong way. They ask, will AI replace me? But the more useful question might be, how can AI help me become more valuable? Because throughout history, people who embraced powerful tools often outperformed people who resisted them. Farmers adopted tractors, businesses adopted computers, engineers adopted calculators. The winners were rarely the people who ignored the new technology. The winners were usually the people who learned how to use it effectively, and then built something with it. That doesn't mean the transition will be easy. Transitions never are. The Industrial Revolution was painful. The rise of computers was painful. The internet disrupted entire industries. Every major technological shift creates uncertainty. We're living through one of those moments right now. The rules are changing, the expectations are changing, the opportunities are changing, and nobody has a complete map of what comes next. That's uncomfortable. Human beings like certainty. We like clear paths, clear careers, clear outcomes. But the future rarely provides those things in advance. Instead, it rewards curiosity, experimentation, adaptability. People willing to explore before the destination is obvious. Ironically, those are the same traits that created many of the world's greatest innovations. The people who built the future were rarely following a proven roadmap. Most of them were navigating uncertainty, just like we are today. Perhaps that's why the next generation shouldn't focus entirely on protecting old career paths. They should focus on developing new capabilities that remain valuable regardless of how technology evolves. Curiosity, communication, problem solving, judgment, creativity, adaptability. The skills that become more important when information becomes free. Because information is rapidly becoming a commodity. But good decisions remain rare. Good leadership remains rare. Good ideas remain rare. Human insight remains rare. And rarity creates value. The things that become difficult to automate often become the things society values most. The future may not belong to the people who know the most. Knowledge is becoming increasingly accessible. The future may belong to the people who can learn the fastest. The people who continuously update their skills, continuously challenge their assumptions, continuously adapt to new realities. Those people become difficult to replace. Because AI may change the tools, but humans still decide how those tools are used. Humans still choose goals. Humans still define meaning. Humans still determine direction. And that's why the most important question isn't whether this is the last generation of junior developers. The more important question is, what kind of generation comes next? A generation that waits for opportunities, or a generation that creates them? A generation that fears change, or a generation that learns to navigate it? History suggests that every technological revolution creates winners and losers. But the winners are rarely the people who predict the future perfectly. They're the people who adapt to it fastest, who learn continuously, who experiment relentlessly, and who keep moving even when the path isn't clear. The latter may be changing, perhaps dramatically, perhaps permanently. But change has always been part of human progress. And the people who understand that first may become the people who build whatever comes next.